So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the GCSE Maths Higher Practice Paper of 2023, Set 1, Paper 1, which is a non-calculator paper. Now as always there'll be a link to the paper in the description below for you to have a attempt at before watching these videos. We go through the answers, and I'll also include a question breakdown so you can see which question refers to which topic. So let's get started on this practice paper, Set 1, Paper 1, which is a non-calculator paper. So looking at question 1, it says write down a number with value greater than 2.33 and less than 2.3 recurring. So for this particular question, all you've got to do is just make sure that your number starts as 2.33. Then your next digit, which is really important, has to either be a 0, a 1, a 2 or a 3. Now in terms of 0, it can't be 0 if you just leave it as 0, but if I put 0, 1, then that technically is still going to be bigger than 2.33. Obviously if I just have a single 0, then that's just going to be exactly the same number. So the next digit can either be a 0, but if you do have a 0, it's got to have a number following it, or it can be a 1, 2 or 3, and then you can basically add absolutely any digit after that and that'll be absolutely fine. The only thing that you've got to be wary of is if you do put a 3 there, so let's just put a 3 there. Now that in itself is a correct and valid answer, but if I then write 4, then that then becomes bigger than 2.3 recurring. So just be mindful of that you don't go too crazy, don't go too close, but I would say something along the lines of 2.331 would be absolutely fine. For B, it says write down a fraction with a value between 1/5 and 1/4. Well, 1/5 is 0.2, 1/4 is 0.25. So if you pick a number between 20 and 25, so let's go for 22, and I write that over 100, and I can simplify that fraction so it's 11 over 50, and we can go from there. Like I said, there's so many different answers you could have, but as long as if you type in, I know it's a non-calculator paper, but if you type your fraction into the calculator, press the equals, as long as it's a number between 0.20 and 0.25, you'll be fine for your final answer. For question 2, it says here is a sequence, and it says work out the expression of the nth term of the sequence. So for this, what we've got to do is work out the difference between each term, which is plus 4. So then in my nth term, I'm going to have 4n. And then I think to myself, what do I need to add to 4 to get the first term? So here I need to add 11. So the nth term is going to be 4n plus 11. Moving on to question 3, it says work out the value of 300 squared, give your answer in standard form. So for this, one way you could do this is to write your question in standard form. So that's going to be 3 times 10 squared, and that's going to be squared. So then from this, all I then need to do is square the 3, which is 9, and then what do we do to the powers when we've got brackets? We multiply, so that's going to be 9 times 10 to the power of 4. Alternatively, what you could have done is just worked out what 300 squared is, which is 90,000, and then convert it in standard form, and that would be absolutely fine as well. Next question then says work out 64.5 divided by 0.15. Well, one tactic of doing this is to basically write the question as a fraction. Then we want to write it so that we haven't got any decimals. So if you multiply both numbers by 100, we get 6450 over 15, and then I've just got to do some long division. So here I've got 15 over 6450, and if I write down the 15 times table, so I've got 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 105, 120, 135 and 150, and then just go through the motions. So 15 doesn't go into 6, carry the 6. Next one is 4, remainder 4, then it's 3, and then it's a 0. So then the correct answer here is going to be 430. So now let's have a look at question 5. So question 5 says the scatter graph shows the number of driving lessons and the number of tests needed to pass by 10 people. And for 5a it says describe the correlation, and we need to circle the correct answer. So for this one, it's going to be a strong positive correlation. Now one way to establish that is to actually draw your line of best fit. So it might require a bit of tinkering, but I would say that something along the lines of and I'd say about there. Looks about right. So you can see that all the points are relatively close to that line that I have drawn. Question B then says, use the line of best fit to estimate the number of tests needed to pass by a person who has 50 lessons. So for this particular question, I need to find 50 lessons, which is here. I then, as soon as it hits my line of best fit, I then go horizontally and I can see that the answer is going to be 4 tests. The next question then says, Mira says that I can use the trend to predict the number of driving tests needed to pass for any number of driving lessons. Comment on her statement. So here there's a couple of correct answers you can have, and it's only worth 1 mark, but basically her statement is false. And the reason for that is because using this data from the 10 people, we can only use the ranges of which the results gives us. So here we can see that we can only estimate lessons from 30 to 65 and only look at people who took tests from 0 to 6. So let me just write that as a statement. So false can only be used for people taking between 30 lessons, 30 to 65 lessons. Another statement you could say is that we don't know if the line of best fit continues, so it could stop. And we can also say that actually that looking at this line of best fit, it kind of implies that if you took 25 lessons, you need 0 tests, which doesn't work. So here, so you could say something along the lines of taking 20 lessons equals 0 tests. Just go back to correct that. Equals 0 tests, which makes no sense. So it might imply that you're not ready for the test, but again, we don't know because, like I said, it goes from there. So even with 25 lessons, we don't know. And also you could have someone who is outside of the trend, which therefore makes it difficult. So for example, you might have someone who has had more private, no, when I say private lessons, sort of lessons on private land, because we'll make sure we keep this legal, and who's familiar with car or just a quick learner. Moving on to question 6, it says which of 7/8 or 1 1/5 is closer to the value of 1. So for this, what we need to do is convert both of these fractions into a decimal. So here we need to do 8 divided by 7. So here 8's go into 7 0 times. So I carry the 7. How many 8's go into 70? That's going to be 8. Remainder 6. How many 8's go into 60? That's going to be 7. Remainder 4. And then we've got 5. So it's going to be 0.875. And 1 1/5, well, that's going to be 1 plus 0.2, which is 1.2. So this is over by 0.2 and this is under by 0.125. So which one is closer? It's going to be 7/8. So then moving on to question 7. So here we've got simultaneous equations. We've got 3a plus 2b equals 25.5 and a plus 2b equals 16.5. We need values of a and b. So we can see that with simultaneous equations, we need to make sure that one of the letters is the same. So we've got the same number of b's and the signs are the same. So all we need to do here is take away the 2 expressions. So 3a take away a is 2a. And 25.5 take away 16.5 leaves me with an answer of 9. So a equals 4.5. So then what I then need to do is then move on to picking one of the equations. So let's go for this one here. So I've got a plus 2b equals 16.5. I know that a equals 4.5. So 4.5 plus 2b equals 16.5. Take the 4.5 away and I get 2b equals 12. So therefore b equals 6. Now for question 8, it just says write down the value of cos 30, and if you know your exact values of trig, you should know that that's going to be root 3 over 2. Question 9, it says 5 integers have a mode of 1, the median of 2 and a mean of 3. What is the greatest possible range of the 5 integers? You must show you're working out. So let's first of all mark our 5 numbers. Now the median of 2, so that means that that's got to be a 2 there, because we've got 5 numbers. The mode of 1 means we've got to have 2 1s, and basically looking at the mean, if we do 5 times 3 equals 15, so all of those numbers have got to add up to give us 15. So looking at this, we know that these numbers here add up to 4, which basically means that these two numbers need to add up to equal 11. So for it to be the biggest range, well, the smallest number that's bigger than 2, well, we can still have a 2, so let's put a 2 there, which means that this number here has got to be a 9. So then looking from this then, all we can then do is basically, well, actually it can't be a 2 because we've got a mode of 1. So that means that this has got to be a 3 and this number therefore has got to be an 8. So then looking at the range, it's going to be 8 take away 1, which is 7. Then moving on to question 10, it says the shape is made from rectangles. On the diagram below, shade the area which is represented by C times D. So for this, we can either shade in this one, or you could shade this one. So any of those would be absolutely fine. Then for the next question, it says on the diagram, shade below an area represented by 2AB. Well, let's first of all label these. So we've got 2AB there. This is CD. That's CD. This is AD. And this is AB. So the area that's represented by the expression of 2AB is going to be this region here and this region here. So here you do have to highlight both of them. The next question then says write an expression for the total area of the whole shape. So here let's just label these again. So we've got AB, CD, CD, AD and AB. So here we've got 2 lots of CD, 2 lots of AB and 1 lot of AD, and there is my final answer. You could write those in absolutely any order. Moving on to question 11, it says that Alan, Ben and Carl ran 1,000 meter race. The distance time graph shows the race, and for 11a it says who won the race. So to win the race you need the shortest time, and the person with the shortest time is going to be Ben, as we can see. So Ben, and the reason for that is because he finished at the shortest, or should I say in the shortest time. Or you could say something along the lines of that he completed the 1,000 meters in less time. So that would be absolutely fine as well. It then says describe the race, mention each runner at least once. So let's first of all look at, now I'm going to write it on this side here, so if we just write B. So let's talk about the initial race. So from the start, well, in the first 2.5 minutes, so in the first 2.5 minutes, Alan was leading. At this point, Ben started to slow down. Before picking up the pace after, and he picked up the pace after 3.5 minutes. Carl ran at a steady pace and it's 4 minutes before moving faster. I'm guessing you ran to finish in, and Carl finished at 5 minutes. Alan had a brief pause, or started quickly, so he started the fastest before taking a brief pause at 3 minutes. And there we've mentioned everyone, and eventually Ben won the race. So the key things to mention here is, as long as you're mentoring each of the people, so you could describe each of the people in separate sentences. You could say Ben started at a very fast pace, faster than both of them. He paused after 3 minutes for, let's say, a quarter of a minute, and then ran at a slower pace to finish at 5 minutes. For Ben, he started at a steady pace. He then slowed down before picking up the pace again after 3.5 minutes to win the race. And Carl ran at a steady pace for 4 minutes and then ran faster to finish at the same time as Alan. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine for 3 marks. For question 12, it says, here is a map of France. We've got a scale of 1 centimetre represents 80 kilometres. And the question is asking us to estimate the time it would take to drive from Nantes to Paris, and assume that the road is straight and the average speed is 100 kilometres per hour. So what we need to do here is to first of all draw a straight line from Nantes to Paris, like so, preferably not with a highlighter. So let's just change that and try that again. Now, depending on your printout, if you have printed this question out, your length might be different to the one that I've got, but if I just have a look at what it should be, so this distance here should be somewhere between 3.8 centimeters to 4.2 centimeters. So we'll just make out that it's 4 centimeters. So if I then do 4 centimeters, I use this scale, multiply that by 80, and that then becomes 320 kilometers. Now the question then says I've then got to use the speed. So the speed is 100 kilometers per hour. And I'll put S there. So then looking at the time, it's going to be the distance, which is 320 divided by 100, which gives me an answer of 3.2 hours. And let's just have a look at how they want the time written. It wants it in hours, so I can just write 3.2 hours. Then moving on to our next question, it says comment on how the assumption affects the accuracy of your estimate. So again, assumption 1 is that it's going to be the estimate is low. As we assume the road is straight, and we know that's pretty much not going to be the case. I should say the road is straight. And the next one is that the estimate is high. If the average speed is higher. So something along those lines would be absolutely fine. So the next question, question 13, it says write, and then we've got an expression. We need to write it in this form. So we need to write it as a single bracket. So the first thing you want to do here is expand the brackets correctly. So we've got 12x plus 8 plus 2x minus 6 plus 19. And if I then just go on to simplify all of that, I get 14x plus 21. I then take out my common factor, which is 7, in which then I've got 2x plus 3. So here a equals 7, b equals 2, and c equals 3. Moving on to question 14, it says the diagram shows a small triangle which is also part of a large triangle. Work out the value of x. So here what we've got to do is look at the similar triangles. So if I just draw those triangles out separately, so my smaller triangle is 2 by 8, and the big triangle is going to be 20, and this is x. So looking at the scale factor, so the scale factor is going to be 20 over 8, which is 10 over 4, which is 5 over 2, so it's 2.5. So then to get from 2 to the big shape, I've got to do 2 times 2.5, which gives me an answer of 5. Moving on to question 15, it says that a shape is rotated 180 degrees about point A. It is then enlarged by a scale factor of -2 with a centre of B. And the question says, draw the final shape on the diagram. So let's just zoom out so we can see this, and we'll go from there. So first thing we want to do is rotate shape A, this shape, from point A of 180 degrees from the point. So here what you should have is that the triangle should look something that looks like this. Now again, you want to make sure that you are using a ruler. I'm setting a very, very bad example, but it should be there rotated. So this is the shape that's rotated 180 degrees from A. Now we then need to enlarge the shape by a scale factor of -2 from centre B. So from that, what we then need to do is to enlarge that. So here we can see that it's 1 point away, so this is going to be 2, and that's going to, this point here is 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to be 8 up here. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8. Is that right? No, it's here. And then we just can go from there. So that's going to be that point there. So our final shape is going to look something like that. And then you just need to shade that in. And that there is our final answer. But again, make sure that you are using a ruler and that your lines are straight. The next question, let's just zoom in for this one. It says to rearrange to make C the subject. Now, as you can see, we've got C on both sides. So what we need to do first, I'm going to put this line here in brackets, and I'm going to take that bracket, the denominator, over to the other side. So I end up with C minus 7 times D equals 3 plus 2C. Now don't too worry about the D, because we're now going to expand this out. So we get DC or CD minus 7D equals 3 plus 2C. Now what we want to do is we want to take everything with a C onto one side and everything that hasn't got C over to the other. So I'm going to take this over to this side, and I'm going to take the plus 2C over to that side. So what we end up with is CD minus 2C equals 3 plus 7D. And then all that's left to do is just divide the bracket over to the other side. So here we get C equals 3 plus 7D, all divided by D minus 2. And if you want to leave the brackets in, that's absolutely fine. Moving on to question 17, it says the diagram shows a rectangle inside a semicircle. The rectangle has dimensions of 24 by 5. Work out the shaded area. I want to give our answer in terms of pi. Now for this, the shaded area is equal to the area of the semicircle minus the area of the rectangle. So what we need to do is find out those first. So let me start by just labeling this. So this is 24 and this is 5. So here the area of the rectangle So let me just work that out here. So the area of the rectangle is going to be 24 times 5. Don't know if I wrote 1 there. Well, 24 times 10 will be 240. 5 is half of that, so it's going to equal 120. So then we need to work out the area of the semicircle. Now for the area of the semicircle, I need to know what the radius is, which is this green line here. Now for this, what I can do is I can use Pythagoras to work out what the radius is. So r squared equals 12 squared plus 5 squared. So r squared equals 144 plus 25. So r squared equals 169. So r equals 13. So therefore, the area of the semicircle is going to be pi times 13 squared divided by 2. So that's going to be 169 pi over 2. So then from this, to work out the shaded area, in terms of pi, it's going to be 169 pi divided by 2 minus 120. Then moving on to our next question. And again, let me just write this as a decimal in case you converted it, in which it would be 84.5 pi minus 120. So that would be another possible answer you could give. Then moving on to question 18, it says work out the value of 16 to the power of minus a half. Well, minus a half means reciprocal. So that's going to be 16 to the power of a half. And everything to the power of a half is the square root. So it's going to be 1 over the square root of 16, which is a quarter. Question 19 says for us to expand our triple bracket. Now this can be done in a number of different ways. It all depends on which bracket you want to start with. So I'm going to start by expanding these two brackets first. So if I write x plus 6, and if I expand this out, let me just do it on the side so you can see my full working out. So here I've got 3x squared minus 5x minus 18x plus 30. And if I join that all together, I get 3x squared minus 23x plus 30. So then here I write 3x squared plus minus 23x plus 30, and then I just expand the brackets again. So here I've got 3x squared cubed minus 23x squared plus 30x, and then for the second set I've got 18x squared, which I'm just going to write underneath. So I kind of column all my x squares together to make it easy for me to collect the like terms. I've got 6 times 23, which is 138, so minus 138x, and then I've got 180. So then adding all these terms up, I get 3x cubed, and it's going to be minus, and it's going to be 5x squared minus 108x plus 180, and there is my final answer. So moving on to question 20, it says the cuboid has dimensions of x centimeters, and y centimeters. It says x is increased by 20%, y is decreased by 10%. Work out and describe the percentage change in the volume of the cuboid. So first of all, let's work out what the original volume is. So the original volume is going to be x squared times y. I'm just going to put a little box around that. So then now let's work out the new volume. Well, the new volume, well, if we're increasing x by 20%, so that means that it's going to be 1.2x times 1.2x. And if we're decreasing y by 10%, then that's going to be 0.9y. Now the next thing for me to do is multiply out those numbers. So I'm going to do 1.2 times 1.2 times 0.9. Well, that's going to give me 1.44. So if I then do 1.44 times 0.9 by doing some decimal multiplying or by converting them into whole numbers, but ultimately you should end up with an answer of 1.296, and that's going to be x squared y. So then comparing this to the original, it's going to be an increase by, and then we just need to state what this is as a decimal multiplier. It's going to be 29.6%. Then moving on to question 21, it says we've got two straight lines are shown. B is the midpoint of AC, and we know that the ratio between TB and BS is in the ratio of 2 to 3, and the question is asking us to work out the coordinates of T. So the first thing we need to do is work out the coordinates of B. Now if B is the midpoint, then all we need to do to find the x coordinate is add the two x values together and divide that by 2. So here what we need to do is do 23 plus 15 divided by 2, and then for the y ordinate we're going to do 12 plus 6 divided by 2. So here 23 plus 15 gives us 38, 38 divided by 2 gives us 19, and 18 divided by 2 gives us 9. So B has a coordinate of 19, 9. So if I just write 19, 9 there. Now if I turn that into a triangle, and if I look at the difference, the basis of that, so the difference between 19 and 31 is 12, and the difference in the heights of 9 to 3 is 6. Now this if I just draw a triangle now from T to B, that this green triangle is 3 times the size of, or let's say if that's 3, if every 3, that this orange triangle is going to be 2. So this base, if I then do 12 divided by 3 times 2, and that gives me 8. So that's going to have a distance of 8. And if I then do with the 6, the same. So I've got 6 divided by 3 times 2 gives me 4. Now, if this coordinate here of B is at 9, and this coordinate here is at 19, going 8 to the left, well, that's going to be 11. And going 4 up, well, that's going to be 13. So that means that the coordinate of T is going to be 11, 13. And then moving on to our next question, which is question 22, looking at surds. It says write 18 over root 2 minus 12 over root 32 in the form of a root 2 over b, where a and b are integers. Well, there's a couple of ways in which we could do this, but first of all, notice that 32 can be simplified. So let me just write down that root 32 equals root 16 times root 2, which is 4 root 2. So then rewriting that fraction, or the question, I've got 18 root 2, or over root 2, equals 12 over 4 root 2. I can then simplify the 12 and the 4, so that cancels down to 3. So then what I've then got is 18 root 2 minus 3 root 2, which then gives me 18 take away 3, which is 15. So it's 15 over root 2. And then from this, what I then need to do is to rationalize the denominator. So if I multiply both of those by root 2, I get 15 root 2 over 4. That can't be simplified, or root 4 I should say, which gives me 15 root 2 over 2, and there is my final answer for that one. Then moving on to question 23a, it says the graph of y equals sine x is shown, and it says on the sketch, on the grid, sketch the graph of sine x plus 1. So here we're adding 1 to the function. Now when you're adding 1 to the function, what you've got to do is you've got basically move the y ordinates up one place. So if I just highlight the key points of this graph, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1 going up one place up, so that then becomes there, that becomes there, that becomes there, that becomes there, and that becomes there. And then all I then need to do is just join those points as best as I can. I'm just going to label that as y equals sine x plus 1. For b, it says y equals sine x, and we need to sketch y equals minus sine x. So here we're reflecting the graph. So reflect on the x-axis, because we are changing the sign of the function. So that then becomes something that looks like that. And then we can just label that as y equals minus sine x. Then for the last part of C, it then says on the grid, sketch the graph of y equals cos x for 0 to 360. Now for this, it's just a case of knowing the graph. So this starts at 1 and it goes to 90, and then it looks something that looks like that. Now you just need to make sure, let me just do that again because I don't think that is as accurate as I could have done. So starting at 1, what we need to do is basically make sure that it goes through all of these points that I've marked with a nice smooth helix curve that looks something like that. And I'm just going to call that y equals cos x. So then moving on to question 24, it says that a bag contains n beads. One bead is black and the rest are white. 2 beads are taken from the bag at random. Show that the probability that both beads are white is n minus 2 over n. So with this particular question, let's first of all write down the probabilities of each of these. So the probability that a black bead is going to be selected first is 1 over n. And the probability that a white bead is selected is going to be, well, there's n number, so it's n minus 1 because you've got that one black bead, and that's going to be over n. So then here, if we took that first white bead, it's going to be n minus 1 over n times, now for the second one, well, we've already selected one white bead, so then it's going to be n minus 1, but we've taken one, so that's going to mean you take another one. And in terms of the total that are in the bag, now from that second pick, well, it's going to be n take away 1 because I've already selected a white bead. So then simplifying this, I have n minus 1 over n multiplied by n minus 2 over n minus 1. Now from this, what we can do is we can spot that n minus 1 cancels out, and it just leaves us with n minus 2 over n, which is what it wanted us to show. Now for 24b, it says the probability that both beads are white is greater than 0.8. Work out the least possible value of n. Well, for this, what I need to do is I need to take the fraction or the expression from a and make that greater than 0.8. Then from this, I then take the n over to the other side. So I have n minus 2 is greater than 0.8n. I take the minus 2 over to the other side and the n over to this side to end up with 1n minus 0.8n is greater than 2. And then here I end up with 0.2n is greater than 2. Then n is going to be greater than 2 divided by 0.2. Then with this, if I multiply both the top and the bottom by 10, I end up with n is greater than 20 over 2. So n has got to be greater than 10. So we're looking at the least possible value. So n has got to equal 11 because it's got to be greater than 10, and we're only with whole numbers. So the smallest whole number that's bigger than 10 is going to be 11. So moving on to our last question, it says that ABCD is a parallelogram, ABE is a straight line, and AB to BE is in the ratio 4:3. BC and ED intersect at F, and A to B is equal to A, and A to D is equal to B. Work out E to D in terms of A to B. So let's first of all work out what we've got to work out, or make a note of what we've got to work out rather. So we want to work out what this line here is going in that direction. So let's just first of all note what we've got. So we know that that's A to D is B, and A to B is A, going in that direction. So looking at this, we know that A to B is A. So AB equals A, and that equals 4 parts. So then to work out B to E, well, if I do A divided by 4 times 3, I end up with 3A over 4. So that's going to be 3A over 4. So B to E is here going to be 3a over 4. So then the next thing for me then to do is to then see, well, how can we get from e to d? Well, e to d, I can now go from e to a and then a to d. So going from e to a, well, that's going to be, if that's 4a over 4, then that's going to be 7 minus 7a over 4 plus b. So it's minus 7a over 4 plus b. Or you could write that as a fraction, as a decimal rather, and 7 divided by 4 gives us 1.75, so we could write or minus 1.75a plus b. So moving on to the last part, it says deduce that e to f in terms of a and b. So for this, what we need to do is first of all recognize that we've got two similar triangles. So if I just work out this first triangle, this yellow one here, let me just do a little sketch, that the base of that is going to be 7 parts because we've got 4a plus 3a, which is 7. Then if I take that smaller triangle out, then we can see here that this smaller triangle is going to have 3 parts because we've got 3a. So looking at this, because we're going from e to f, we're going from this to that, and if I just label these points here, so that's e to d and that's e to f, that the scale factor then is going to be that e to f equals 3/7 of e to d. Now we already know what e to d is, which is this expression here, or what you've written as a decimal. So here what we've then got is that e to f equals 3/7. Now I'm going to write it, I'm going to use the fractional answer, so I've got minus 7a over 4 plus b. Now 3 times minus 7 gives me minus 21a. 7 times 4 gives me 28 plus, and it's 3 over 7b. Then if I simplify this first fraction, I get minus 3 over 4a plus 3 over 7b, and that there is my final answer for 25b.